Nestled in the White Mountains of New Hampshire lies a small town. It's a town of covered bridges and of family-owned businesses. It has its claims to fame, such as being the frequent 1940s home of actress Bette Davis, as well as the birthplace of the author of Pollyanna. But for fans of 3D, there is something else intriguing about this town's history. Stereo cards were a common form of entertainment, consisting of two almost identical pictures taken from different angles. They would appear 3D when viewed through a device called a stereoscope. It was Littleton, New Hampshire that ended up becoming the stereo capital of the world, the leading exporter of 3D photos. Foremost in this endeavor was Benjamin Kilburn, along with his brother Edward, as well as fellow stereo photographer Frank Weller and others. With his twin-lens 3D camera, Kilburn and his associates traveled the world, capturing all variety of scenes. This was especially fascinating to the common public who had never seen these things before in this way, in the days before TV and internet. Kilburn's second and third factories were right by the railroad, facilitating quick shipment to audiences nationwide.
These are the file cabinets that they have our collection of stereoscopic views. Not all of them are digitized. We're getting there. But I do have a spreadsheet with the numbers, the companies that did the photographs, the topic, what's on it. We have a sample book. So in the sample book, you wouldn't have both pictures. You would only have half. So they'd come and knock at the door, and there'd be a young man dressed up to the nines with a case. He would have one of these, and she would go and make tea, and they would sit in the parlor. Remember, not the living room, the parlor. She would look at the pictures, and he would eat cookies and tea. And she had a handsome young man who was entertaining her for the afternoon. And what she would do is order the pictures. I want number this, I want number that, I want number this, da-da-da-da-da, go through the book. And she might go through and blow the budget, spend $1.50, $1.75, and order these things, and have to deal with it when her husband came home, but she had a great afternoon. People didn't do an awful lot of traveling back then because they couldn't afford it. But what they could do is they could bring the world into their house, and they could see things that they only dreamt about visiting in person. These were used in school, so when they talked about ancient Greece, when they talked about Egypt, they would pass those things around. If they were lucky enough, if the school had a budget enough to be able to purchase one of those. Or someone may have had one at home, we bring it in. Ben Kilburn would send he had a couple of photographers who would work with him, who would travel the world. They got a real big push from the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. But he did most of his. He did some around here. He did a lot of the White Mountains, but he did a lot of Europe, a lot of the United States. Frank Weller was a young man. He was only 44 years old when he passed away of tuberculosis in 1877. Weller did mainly Littleton. He did Franconia Notch. I prefer Weller because Weller shows the area. You know, I have an interest in the Columbian Exposition, but it's not Main Street of the 1860s. Back in the day, not only did they take photographs of trees, mountains, the Eiffel Tower, Boston Common, or wherever they were, they would actually tell stories. So you would have something like, the series was called The Wedding. So you'd have like on the lower right-hand corner, you would have a number, 500. And then in the middle, you would have the bride. So you'd put it in, and you see the bride. Then you took that out, took 501, put it in, read the bottom, the groom. You saw the groom. Took it out, put another one in, 502. You were the mother of the bride. So if the whole story would go through, right on through. This here shows, this is by Weller, shows a man sleeping and there's a spirit. And they used to do double exposures. Because you have to remember, during this time, spiritualism was really going bananas at this time. The country choir, there's a piece of history on this. Weller's brother is in this photograph. Weller's father is in this photograph. Weller's wife is in this photograph. So, I mean, they got people, locals, to dress up and do this. What Weller and Kilburn did is they would have local folk. They were the first actors. Littleton was Hollywood. When Kilburn died in 1909, his wife ended up getting the factory. It was sold to a company, to a group or a person from New York who turned it into tenements. And it's an apartment building now. So when they went through to clean, there were thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of stereoscopic views in there, and they used them for heat. They burnt them in the fireplace, in the thing. That's how they got rid of it. Thousands of them were burned.
The mass popularity of 3D seems to come in waves, almost generational. On this wave, they had already reached the crest.
When I have youngsters come in, they just go absolutely bananas looking at these things. They love these because, I'll ask them questions like, what are you seeing? Because I think we've lost that ability to look at, or we're losing it, to look at one thing and really seeing what it is. We don't analyze. Our critical thinking skills are a little bit dented.
Modern VR devices, however, show how everything old is new again.
It's funny because I had a group of sixth graders and one of them said, "Oh my word, look at this, it's virtual reality." And I went, "Yes, it is. It's Victorian virtual reality."
Speaking of evolving technology, how appropriate that Littleton's local movie theater was the first in the state to be all digital 3D. It's also one of relatively few theaters to use Dolby 3D technology rather than cheaper polarized lenses. So what remains of the original 3D legacy? The National Stereoscopic Association recognized the town's role in advancing stereoscopy. A good amount of Kilburn and Weller's prints and equipment are archived at the Littleton Area Historical Museum. Kilburn himself lays to rest in nearby Glenwood Cemetery. And at his last stereo card factory, a historical marker stands.
Kilburn did a lot for the town, gave a lot to the town, made a lot of money, worked like a son of a gun. People would look through these pictures and sit in their parlor, and I would see one thing and I'd hand it to you. Then you'd pass it on to someone else, go, "Whoa, look at that. There's something over here." And by the time it got back to me, I had like 3 people input, and we would pass that picture around to each other, and we would make up our own stories. I think it was called imagination.